A lot's going on in the world today, and we'll be talking about that here on World Edition on April 14th of 2026. The U.S. oil blockade is set to boost American exports and prices at the pump. So definitely some folks are asking, including those at Al Jazeera, how much will U.S. Hormuz blockade hurt Iran, and does Tehran have an escape? So definitely China says Trump blockade is dangerous as Iran linked ships transit the Strait of Hormuz and everything like that. And Eric Swalwell has exited politics after sexual assault accusations. Two Swalwell accusers discussed his downfall and the fear of coming forward. He thought he was untouchable. And Republicans weirdly might be feeling Eric Swalwell's pain. And a dozen battleground Democrats send Swalwell campaign donations to charity. So definitely that's something that's going on as well. And in sports news, Dallas Wings select Ashley Fudd as the of UConn as the number one in the WNBA draft with a $500,000 payday. So she'll be getting some money as she get ready to play in the WNBA. And coming back to world news, Israel and Lebanon are set to meet for the first direct talks in more than 30 years. And Bahama police have released the Michigan man questioned after his wife disappeared from their boat. So that's definitely something that folks are talking about as well. So lots going on in that space and around that situation and all along those lines. And definitely a lot's going on in the world. And of course, we'll be talking about that here on World Edition, seeing what folks' reactions are to a number of these stories. Hezbollah officials say the group won't abide by any agreement that's out there and everything like that. So Macron is under fire over Iran Hezbollah policy as Trump administration hosts Israel-Lebanon talks. Rubio to host the Israeli and the Lebanese ambassadors for talks amid ceasefire efforts. So definitely we'll see how these talks go and what happens in that space. Peter Magyar wins the Hungarian election and defeats Viktor Orban. So definitely, we were never friends. Kremlin plays down loss of an ally following Orban's election defeat. And Serbia's Alexander Vucic clashes with Peter Magyar over Putin Godfather remark. So Russian offensive campaign assessment, folks are still talking about that as the war in Ukraine is going on as well. And gunman opens fire at a high school in Turkey, wounding at least 16. So at least 16 were wounded in a Turkey high school shooting, and the gunman is dead. 16 injured after an ex-student opens fire at the high school in Turkey. Pope Leo the 14th is visiting Algeria, first time a pope has done that, and Cameroon separatists are to pause fighting ahead of the pope visit to that area. Pope Leo arrives in Algeria, preaching harmony, and visits a mosque. So with Algeria visit, Pope Leo returns to his roots in a holy order. So definitely, it looks like the Pope is also clashing with President Trump and all along those lines. North Korea tests cruise and anti-ship missiles from destroyer. Kim Jong-un oversees cruise missile launches from prized new North Korean warship. North Korea tests cruise and anti-ship missiles from the naval destroyer. So North Korea's Kim Jong-un supervised the missile test from his naval destroyer, and we'll see how that all plays out as well. And as war chills economies, Dubai's most vulnerable bears the cost. So that's something that's being reported in the news as well. So definitely we're seeing some folks that are looking at this and seeing how that is impacting them or not impacting them, as the case may be, and all along those lines. So definitely that is something that folks are talking about as well. So definitely why Dubai will abide. The Emirates on the tightrope is what is being reported in the New York Review of Books, and the UAE's continuity is based not on avoiding risk, but managing it. And will Viktor Orban's legacy live on in Brussels even without him? So the Democracy for Sale publication is saying, what happens to Britain's radical right if Orban loses? And Matt Godwin's lucrative Hungarian fellowship could be in line for the chop following Orban's defeat. Reformed UK will feel the blow of the far right's defeat in Hungary, is what is being reported by the Socialist Worker. And Human Rights Watch, Bahrain Sayyad Mohammed Omsaway has died in custody. So as Bahrain cracked down amid war, a death in custody has sparked an outrage. And G says world order crumbling into disarray as Iran war drags on. Spain and China pledge closer ties in the face of threats to world order. Xi and Sanchez say China and Spain should help safeguard multilateralism. So Spanish Prime Minister strong ties with China is in Europe's interest. So I'll hear what maybe Nick, who is now living in Spain, has to say about that and all along those lines. But a lot's going on in the world. And of course, we're definitely glad to be pointing out and seeing what folks have to say about a number of these stories. Southport killer's parents failed in moral duty to report son, so UA inquiry lays bare catastrophic mischances before stabbing at that particular dance. So some folks, including those at the week, are asking why wasn't the Southport killer stopped? Killer's parents could have prevented Southport attack in the UK, report says. And Colombia approves cull of Pablo Escobar legacy wild hippos. So Colombia to euthanize dozens of cocaine hippos linked to drug lord Pablo Escobar in a bid to control the population. Colombia approves a plan to cull those roaming hippos linked to Pablo Escobar. So we'll see how this all goes as well. And 3 tankers attempt Hormuz transit after U.S. flags blockade. Tankers passed Strait of Hormuz on the first day of the U.S. blockade, is what the data is showing. So it does look like there are ships sailing through the Strait of Hormuz, and the state of the U.S. blockade is unclear as some ships are transiting the Strait of Hormuz. So it looks like U.S. sanctioned ships have passed the Strait of Hormuz as China calls Trump aid's blockade dangerous. So we'll see how this all plays out as well. Israel hasn't attacked Beirut since Wednesday amid U.S. pressure. So Israeli strike killed infant girl in South Lebanon during the father's funeral. IDF says 250 Hezbollah fighters killed in minutes in the April 8th strike. I can't endure this inside a bombarded city in southern Lebanon, is what was being reported in the New York Times. In new war with Israel, Hezbollah defies notion that it was crippled. So while the Lebanon conflict complicates resolution of the Iran war, Hezbollah rearms, but how is what some folks are asking. And no U.S.-Iran peace deal, and Viktor Orban has conceded defeat, as I said earlier, and everything like that. So that's something that is going on in the world. And of course, Super Typhoon Sinlaku threatens the U.S. northern Mariana Islands. That was reported a couple of days ago, and they're saying that winds and rain are pummeling Marianas as Super Typhoon Sinlaku approaches, and that was reported earlier today. So it looks like they might be having some very bad weather there as well. And Prince Harry and Meghan Markle arrive in Australia for a private visit. Harry and Meghan mix charity and business on their Australia visit. The one thing Harry and Meghan aren't doing on their trip to Australia is what Vanity Fair is reporting. So definitely less pomp, more cosplay. Prince Harry and Meghan's far royal Australian tour. So we'll see how this all plays out as well. And it, like I said, there's a lot going on with the whole situation in Hezbollah and the Strait of Hormuz. Italy has suspended its defense agreement with Israel. Italy suspends defense agreement with Israel, and Italy's suspended defense agreement is another embarrassing failure for their prime minister. So Italy's Meloni halts the defense pact with Israel. And robots captured Russian army positions for the first time in history, Zelensky says. So there's a lot going on in the war in the Ukraine, and I'm sure that there'll be conversations about that on the Ukraine show that'll be coming up in less than an hour and all along those lines. So Ukraine drone revolution is now transforming the ground war. So first victory for the battle brigade run by robots alone is what is being reported. Ukraine said it captured a Russian position using only ground robots and drones, no infantry for the first time. And Israeli forces fired tear gas at school children holding a West Bank sit-in. So that was reported on yesterday. Suffocation cases among students after Israeli forces fired tear gas canisters at them near Hebron. So definitely that's something that is going on in the world as well. And Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's wife has been charged with corruption after a years-long probe. So the Spanish Prime Minister's wife has been charged with corruption after a 2-year probe, and we'll see how this plays out in the world stage as well. And Senegal has the first conviction under law toughening punishment for homosexual acts. So that was reported on yesterday. And fuel protests are causing traffic disruption across Ireland. Irish Prime Minister announces a £505 million in fuel cost measures after days of protests. So Ireland cuts tax on motor fuel as protests grip the country. Irish police clear the Dublin blockade staged by fuel price protesters. So definitely that's something that's in the news as well. And UN concerned as opposition retakes a strategic town in South Sudan. And a stampede at a Haitian mountaintop fortress kills at least 25 people and injures many others as well. As a matter of fact, some of the reports were said it could have been as many as 30 killed in that stampede and all along those lines. So definitely there's a lot going on in the world, including the president apparently getting a DoorDash order and giving $100 tip, even though he tried to get the DoorDash supplier to say that their viewings on women in men in women's sports. And it sounds like she was trying to avoid that conversation altogether and all along those lines. And she also wouldn't say whether she voted for him or not. But that was definitely some humorous moments. And he did give her $100 tip, apparently, and all along those lines. So we'll see how this is all going to play out, since I think this was all part of his campaign to show how great the No Tips campaign is and all along those lines. I see I've got Rick Rosner with me, so I'll bring him on and see if he saw that story and everything along those lines. But
I saw it. Yeah. I mean, he's just, I mean, all right, it's fine. He had a DoorDash lady come to the door. Came all the way from Arkansas to deliver him McDonald's and I don't know what else.
yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know
well,
what else either, but it sounded like it was $100 tip, and I watched it on Stephen Colbert. And it looked like it was very cumbersome and all along those lines, because he did ask her some questions as he was doing
he
his
tried to
press
get her to
conference.
weigh in on trans athletes, and she
Right.
said, "I'm just here for the no tax on tips."
Said she was just there for the no tax on tips, and that she was not going to comment on that. Also tried to get her to say whether she voted for him, and I think her answer was maybe. So I think she was trying to duck that answer and everything like that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was a comical moment. And of course, he's been getting a lot of heat for this Jesus painting that he's claiming was supposed to be him as a doctor. Which
All right. So a little background. Not last night. The night before last, he was up all night posting stuff on his personal Twitter, which is Truth Social.
right,
And from about 9:30 at night until 4 in the morning, he posted, I think, a couple dozen things. And one of them was this AI generated picture that he found somewhere and retweeted of him in a white robe with a red cowling, laying hands, he's glowing, laying hands on a sick man in bed, fighter planes in the background, the American flag, just a lot of stuff going on. And uh, it a lot of people saw the thing and saw that he was comparing himself to Jesus, that this is what Jesus generally wears in paintings,
right.
and called on it. He said, I didn't think I was Jesus. I thought I was a doctor, healing this guy. And, um, a lot of people said, no, he's lying. But, when you're tweeting stuff, I think this tweet went out at 2:30 in the morning. He's been up all night, just tweeting out a bunch of crazy crap. He's not a smart guy, especially at 2:30. It's possible he thought it was a doctor thing. But what's more disturbing is our president, who has charge of our nukes, is staying up all night just tweeting bullshit. Like it's
Yeah,
so.
it's very concerning and everything like that. And apparently, I know one of his allies is quitting. Another one that is not an ally is quitting as well. So it looks like we got two representatives that are announced their resignation
Well,
because
okay, so we got Swalwell,
right,
who has been credibly accused by 4 women of sexual assault,
yeah,
right up to and including rape of one of the women.
right,
who she got drunk with him at the very least, and he got on top of, anyway. So he was the leading candidate, the leading Democratic candidate for governor of California.
Right.
He's suspended his campaign. He's done with that, and he's left Congress.
Right.
And members of Congress are saying he maybe should be investigated and prosecuted for sexual assault. Now, the other guy is Tony Gonzalez, a Republican member of Congress from, I think, Texas. And Tony Gonzalez pestered one of his aides into an affair, pestered her into sending him naked photos, and pestered her so much that eventually she covered herself in gasoline and lit herself on fire and died.
Right.
Now, there was perhaps other stuff going on in her life. That wasn't the only thing going on, but that he would be part of this led a bunch of people to say, yeah, he should leave Congress. But the Republicans didn't want him to leave because they've only got a 2 or a 3 vote margin in Congress. If he leaves, there's a chance that if another couple Republicans flipped, the Democrats could take control of the House of Representatives.
Right.
So with Swalwell leaving, Gonzalez can leave and preserve the Republicans' small margin.
Yeah, to have to see what goes on in the midterms and everything like that. I'm beginning to think, and I told you, I think I went on one about, it was right around the pandemic, so let's say about 5 years ago and everything like that. But what is it with people going on cruises and then apparently deciding that cruise is a perfect place for a murder? Because we got the case in the Bahamas hold on a second, the case in the Bahamas where the husband was accused of killing his wife, even though there's no body, as the Bahama police have said. So that's that. And then the Florida teenager was recently, Anna Kepner's stepbrother has been indicted by a federal grand jury because he's been charged with sexually assaulting and killing his stepsister on a cruise ship and everything. So,
yeah, so
Kepner was the victim. And
my wife and I are going on a teeny little cruise for our wedding anniversary, and we're staying well away from the rails. So yeah, this happens not infrequently because in the middle of the ocean, there's no evidence, and there's also it's tough to investigate because you're not subject to. I mean, there's less law enforcement, right? Because you're in international waters. The guy whose wife, they weren't on a cruise ship with the wife. They were in a dinghy on the way to their sailboat. The dinghy is one of those little, 8-foot little things that used to go from shore to ship or whatever.
Right.
And he said the weather was rough and she fell overboard.
Right. And apparently the Bahama police are saying that there isn't no body because if she fell overboard, depending on how far out they were and everything like that, the sharks or whatever else out there may have gotten to her and there's no body as of yet and everything. So I think that's what the Bahama law enforcement was saying, is that they can't really prosecute anything if there's no body to actually investigate.
So yeah, if you're going on a cruise, you want to be pretty sure about the person you're going with, and you don't want to get too drunk.
No, you definitely don't want to do that. And you definitely don't want to be on a dinghy. I remember being on the one cruise, I remember being trained to go on the dinghy because, most of these cruises have their own island, but the weather was choppy, so I didn't have to actually get on the dinghy to go to the island because that's when they have you go on the dinghies to the island. But the weather was choppy, so we did not have that experience, me and the friend that went on that particular cruise and everything like that. But they told me that
cruises are really fun. They're a really lazy vacation because your hotel just moves with you. You unpack once, you go to a few places depending on the cruise, and there's a ton of food. Uh,
There's too much food and there's too much activity, like you said. Because I think the one I went to, there was a magician, there were a couple of bands that were playing, and there was definitely lots of good food, and there was art and a number of other things. So, like you said, it's a walk-in hotel. I think on the one I went to, there was some people of the Amish background. They were doing that celebration where they get to go and enjoy the world before they have to go back.
Rumspringer, yeah, where you get to spend a year seeing what the world is like before you go back into Amish seclusion.
Right. So there was a family of
Yeah,
Amish folks that
and
were doing that.
cruise ship art. Yeah, there's an art gallery on the ship, and all the art. It's not great art, but
No,
every piece has all the colors of the rainbow in it. Right? It's very like colorful, and that makes people who don't know better want to buy it.
no, that plus they're very much aggressive salesmen. I mean, I know we've got the
Yeah,
Time Share show, but they are equally as aggressive, and they're usually like some name artists. I mean, it might be Prince or stuff like that, but there are some name artists that they will be selling you as well. But yeah, they try to get you to buy this or that. I think I bought like a Disney piece that is still laying around the house, even though I don't have it hanging anywhere and everything like that. But yeah,
yeah,
there's all kinds of art that they offer you and everything like that. But yeah, and you get like a nice little certification. But yeah, there's
yeah,
they're
yeah.
high pressure. They're definitely high pressure salesmen. It looks like the Texas governor is threatening to pull 110 million in public safety funds over Houston's new immigration policy. So, a crisis situation states are threatening to pull public safety funding over ordinance limiting when the HBT can call ICE and everything like that. And so, there's immigration was a conversation yesterday, briefly on Dr. Anthony's show, the All Around show, because she was talking about the difference between Africans and foundational blacks, because she was saying that foundational blacks need to get all the reparation, meaning those that were born in the United States is what a foundational black is and everything like that, and not so much those that are from Africa, because she's afraid that the Africans are going to take the money and run. And definitely she seems to think that there is some division between the
Well,
foundational black.
so speaking of people from other countries coming to the U.S., my wife and I watched a lot of the WNBA draft yesterday,
Uh-huh.
and there were a crazy number of people who from France, from Kenya, from Germany. U.S. women's basketball is now like the sucking up like the most talented players from around the world.
No, there's no doubt about that. Apparently, UCLA set a record with 5 first-round picks, including Kathy Engelbert and AC Fudd and everything like that. So I think I
Yeah,
pronounced the name right.
Lauren Betts. Yeah,
Lauren
so
Betts and
they set
Gabriella
a record
Jacques.
for 6 seniors off the national championship team got drafted, and 5 of them went in the first round. So
Exactly. And the one thing about these basketball players is I'm looking at this picture and everything like that is there is no doubt that basketball players, particularly women basketball players, are very tall and everything like that because all these women look like they're probably about 5'7", 5'8", 5'6", and probably also
no,
looking
well, Lauren
very
Best is
curvaceous.
6'7". We saw, and I like a tall woman. In college, I hit on one of our basketball players. She's 6'4". She didn't want anything to do with a little Jewy guy, but I don't know if she even liked guys, but she certainly didn't like a 5'10", 5'11" little guy going, yeah, you want to. But yeah,
She
my
was
wife is tall. I went to a dance and she was like one of the tallest women in the room. I'm like, I want to dance with her. Um,
so how much taller is she than you, or are y'all about the same height?
no, so I'm on a good day. I'm maybe an inch taller. If I've had a shitty day, then maybe we're equal because I'm like a little slumped over.
So you're about the both of you are about 6 even or 5'11",
No,
something
no,
like.
I need to put on cowboy boots if I want to be 6 foot tall.
Okay, so you got to put on the cowboy boots and everything like that. And you're talking about people getting drafted, and there might be some foreign players that'll get drafted in the NFL because the NFL draft is coming up as well. I think that's later on this month. And right now, Arvell Reese is back in the number 1 spot. But yeah, it looks like there'll be some folks, including some that might be from other countries, that'll be getting drafted in the NFL and the NBA will be starting their playoffs this weekend and everything like that. So the play-in tournament will be the first part of the playoffs, and then we'll get to the regular matches after the teams that were at the bottom decide who will be
Yeah.
representing the eighth team and everything like that.
The fun thing about the draft is you get to see the athletes dressed up. And like, so all the women are wearing pretty much prom dresses.
Mhm.
And it's fun to see, like, somebody who's 6'3" in a prom dress.
Yeah, they got their prom dresses and everything like that. And of course, hockey playoffs are going to start. The Carolina Hurricanes will be a number one team and everything like that, even though the Philadelphia Flyers beat them in a overtime to clinch their berth. So they'll be one of the wild cards and everything like that. So, and I think they've got one more game the Hurricanes do, and then we'll figure out who's going to be in actually the winning the Stanley Cup, which is one of the oldest trophies out there of all and everything like that. So that's
the I think tonight the NBA play-in games begin.
Right. The NBA play-in.
So 12 teams, 6 in each of the divisions, or the make the playoffs outright, but those haven't started yet. So the first top 6 teams make the playoffs. Then the next 4 teams, 7th place through 10th place, have to do a mini tournament to win the last 2 spots in the playoffs. So the play-in tournament begins tonight.
Yeah, that begins tonight and everything like that. There's still people that are going into the transfer portal, and there's still people that are actually being picked by different teams. I think one of the Duke players is going to Indiana and all along those lines. So the NBA draft is going, but also a lot of these players are going to make additional money because they didn't get enough playing time with wherever they were at, or they wanted to get a better opportunity. So there's this whole notion of no loyalty to a college and everything, as they all are kind of like doing the free agency thing. So there's I want to say they said about half of the players in the NCAA are somehow in the portal or something like that.
I like it. When we were young, the NCAA rules, they limited what athletes could get in terms of compensation, which was basically nothing. You got your scholarship. But if you're a football, if you're a guard or a tackle and you weigh 305 and you'd be better at your position by getting up to 320, a booster could not pay for your groceries. You had to figure out some other way to get the food you needed. And it was ridiculous. Some of the rules we had a whole thing at USC where I forget the guy's name, but his parents were given an SUV by a booster, and that destroyed his eligibility. Now it's more fair. I think it's more
fair now and everything like that. Hey, go ahead.
I just think it's fun that I know it's terrible for coaches and athletic staff that any athlete can get a better offer from another. A good athlete could play for 3 or 4 different schools in their college career, which is, if you're trying to build a team, that's awful. But it's great to watch.
It's great to watch and everything like that. I saw that Nick was trying to come in. Hopefully, he'll come back in because I had questions for him about what's going on.
Well, did you talk about Sam Altman?
What about
the AI guy?
No, tell me about him.
So a lunatic who doesn't like AI, and there's plenty of reasons to be suspicious of AI, threw a Molotov cocktail at Sam Altman's house, trying to burn down his house and maybe kill Sam Altman.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that, but I did see some other news about your neck of the woods, Los Angeles. Apparently, there's a Los Angeles school district that could close all its schools on Tuesday.
But they forestalled the strike. So there were 3 potential sources of the strike. The teachers had gripes, the administrative staff, and there was one other group of people associated with the schools who all were threatening to strike. And they solved all 3 strikes. Today was supposed to be the start date, but no, kids are not getting a day off.
No day off and everything like that.
So
Rogan, by the way, Joe Rogan, we all know that he's got different things to say, but he's saying that America is facing a potential population collapse as many Americans, and I know you talked about this, are not able or willing to reproduce. So Joe Rogan and epidemiologist Shauna H. Swan spoke about the population crisis impacting multiple countries. So apparently this is a problem that is impacting not just us, but a lot of folks around the world. And I know it's been a popular topic here that you brought up a couple of times, but even this popular podcaster, Joe Rogan, has had it on his things as well. So it looks like it's a major problem around the
yeah.
world and everything like this.
Well, it depends on if you think we've got 8.25 billion people on the planet. So, you know, and which is the most ever. But yeah, if you think a shrinking population is a problem of the world, that we will reach peak population sometime in the early 2050s, and with about when we'll hit between 9 and 10 billion people, and then the total population will start dropping, where the only populated continent after 2050 that'll have net population growth is Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very
but
true.
it creates, like Japan has a shrinking population, and you see it most in services for old people. They don't have enough young people to take care of old people, so they use a lot of robots to help with that. And you need a different, your economy needs to be structured a little differently if you've got a shrinking population. The US population is growing at the slowest rate in history, less than 0.5%, which means in a country of 345 million people, we're only adding we're adding fewer than 2 million people a year, and that's with immigration. And Trump has shut down immigration. So it's possible that before Trump leaves office, we may have a year in which the U.S. doesn't grow in population at all.
Yeah, well, speaking of growing in population, because I know that a lot of times it will impact the Pacific, not so much the East Coast, even though the East Coast can be impacted as well. But I just wonder, how concerned are you about a super El Nino? Because they're saying that a rare one could form in the coming months. They don't happen that often. There's only been 5 since 1950, with the last taking place from 2015 to 2016. And scientists still aren't sure whether an El Nino is certain this year, but the likelihood is increasing, with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration predicting on April 9th a 61% chance of an El Nino and a 1 in 4 chance that it might be strong. So how worried are you about an El Nino?
Not super worried. I mean, we don't get much in the way of weather in LA. Right. We only get, like, I don't know, 12 days of rain a year. So I don't know I forget what an El Nino brings.
And El Nino is like a superstorm, so it's supposed to bring like this big, like, I think tornado type weather and everything like that. So an El Nino is supposed to be like this big superstorm.
Yeah, we'll be fine, I think.
Yeah, because an El Nino and a La Nina are the names for warm and cold phases of a natural climate pattern that take place across the tropical Pacific. El Nino is characterized by an unusually warm ocean temperature, while La Nina is characterized by unusually cool ocean temperatures. And El Ninos typically occur every 2 to 7 years and can last anywhere from 9 to 12 months to a few years. So
yeah, well, we need rain, though people in LA don't know how to drive in the rain.
You said y'all do need rain?
Yeah, we need rain for growing stuff. And you saw what happened when a water shortage, when we had fires. We didn't have enough water to put out the fires. We lost 12,000 homes. Our home sits on 2 different kinds of soil, apparently. And when we don't have rain for months, we can't open our side gate to take out our trash barrels. It takes 2, because the ground sinks like half an inch versus the house, and it makes the gate all screwed up, and it takes 2 of us to try to force open the gate so we can take our trash out. So we like a little bit of rain because it puffs up the ground again and our gate works.
Well, the Time Magazine had an interesting article and everything like that. They're saying that, and I try to avoid the conversation because, we all know that we have a beginning date and an end date and everything like that. But Time Magazine is apparently saying that we all need to have a conversation about death because they said the more you think about death, the more alive you might feel, and not just in the at least I'm still breathing kind of way, experts say, but in a galvanizing, make the most of every moment rush of intention. So there's a Dr. Shoshana Ungerleider, founder of InWell, a nonprofit that helps people talk about and plan for the end of life, recommending adopting a new habit, ending the day with a 2-minute mortality check-in. So I guess
So,
end of
I
the day,
mean,
your
we're
check-in.
about to have an epidemic of death because the baby boomers, the youngest baby boomer is now, 62? The oldest baby boomer, the baby boomers were born between 1964 and 1945. So the youngest is 62. The oldest baby boomer is 81. We've got good medicine that most people live into their 80s now. If you're a boomer, you're very likely to make it into your 80s.
Yeah, definitely into the 80s. I mean, that would only be another 20 years for me. My dad is in his mid 80s, and hopefully he'll be around even many more years and everything like that. But apparently, they're saying the mortality check-in doesn't have to be complex. Ungerleider is suggesting a simple 3-part structure. First, acknowledge that your time is finite. Then think about what matters most today or this week. Finally, set one small intention for how you'll live that out. It doesn't have to be this massive thing, she says. It's really just acknowledge, orient, and set an intention. So it sounds like you're basically trying to set an intention for the week as to what you will do and everything. So here's an example of what your internal dialogue might sound like doing a mortality reflection. My time on earth won't last forever. Someday I'll die. When I do, I might regret how much time I spent stressing about work deadlines, which I won't even remember in a year, and how little time I spent reaching out to people I care about. Tomorrow I'll text my sister and take a real break outside, or I say my relationship and my health matters most. But today don't really reflect that. Tomorrow I'm going to make one choice that actually lines up with these priorities. So it sounds like you're basically making a commitment for week by week to do some things.
The deal is that we have more time sucks. We've talked about the baby shortage, and one reason for it, like if you go on Twitter and you talk about the baby shortage, somebody in the comments will say it's the phones. The first smartphone came out in 2007. Now we have 8 billion smartphones in the world for 8 billion people. Some people don't have any, some people have more than one, but it's changed the way we live our lives, and we're always looking at our phones. And
also it's expensive to raise a kid. I mean,
it's definitely expensive to raise a kid and everything like that. But I do have a question based on what Rick just said, and I got a question for you, Nick. I've got your back and everything like that. But the question that I've got for you is, how many of you could go without a day without your social devices and everything like that? Because I was actually working yesterday evening, as I often do on Mondays, at the Cultural Arts Center that I work at, the Hayti Heritage Center, and there was a young lady that was paying her fee for her dance class, and she told me that she was in the middle of a 1-day fast. I mean, there was a lot of other fasts, like I think she had to give up candy and give up some other things, and this was like a challenge that was a work challenge. But one of those challenges was that she could not touch social media at all. And I think she accidentally hit the Facebook button, so she was worried that her friends might be calling her on that and everything like that. But I was wondering how many of you could last a day without actually going on social media, because that's what she had to do.
And anybody can last a day. I mean, the fact though, it's here to stay. When I'm on the subways in Spain, the first thing everybody does is they get on their bloody cell phones, and they're all watching their cell phones. Partially, I think it's because then they can ignore all the other people that are on the subway and the crowdedness of it. I don't see it as a negative or positive. I see it like sand on a beach. Okay?
But I mean, it's part of why people don't hook up. If you were on the subway in 1983, you were either looking at a book or a newspaper, or you were looking around at the people around you. And maybe you see somebody who's attractive. Maybe you talk to them. But now
you're forgetting an item in 1983, because in 1983 I was in college. I had a friend of mine that was a socialist. I mean, he was a known socialist. I don't know whether he's still a socialist or not because we lost touch way after I graduated. So I've not seen Joe, and I can't even think of Joe's last name. Even though I know he was Polish and everything like that, or one of the Slavic countries. But I do remember that one of the things that you just forgot that people had in the 80s was this thing called the Walkman. He used to call it a tool of bourgeois subjectivity because you could literally put it on your head and just ignore whoever was around you and everything like that. So
Yeah.
like, he was a socialist, so he considered that a form of bourgeois subjectivity.
Sure. Okay. That was the beginning. You know, I mean, we've always had ways to ignore the people around us on public transportation, but, you know, a Walkman leaves your eyes free to look around.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I mean, also, you know, the cell phones are computers. So basically, you're carrying your computer around with you. It's not really a phone anymore. That's the reason they call it smartphone.
Yeah. So I look at, you know, I get annoyed with people at the gym a little bit, and when they're sitting on a piece of equipment for 5 minutes between sets, and so sometimes I'll look at what they're looking at. And
I thought they just did that in Spain. It's the stupidest thing I ever saw.
But
when they go work out, okay, they sit on the machine until they're ready to leave, and let the other people stand away. I thought that was just a Spanish thing. I guess it happens.
You know where they don't do it as much in London. People do their sets. They actually
and then get off the stupid machine.
But here in LA, everybody's on their phones. I look at what people are looking at. A lot of people are watching videos or movies, and like if you can watch, if somebody's spent $200 million making a superhero movie, and you can be on the subway watching a feature film, that of course that's preferable to watching, somebody scratching his balls next.
Yeah, but a lot of people are watching the people scratching their balls because I also watch people when what they're watching on the bus because I do a lot of transportation around the buses, and I see people that are looking at a lot of the Instagram models and looking at a lot of the stuff like what Mr. Beast does and things like that. So they're looking at stunt kinds of images.
Okay.
So a lot of people are doing that. Nick, the question I have for you is Spain was in the news twice, and I don't know how much of a fan you are of Mr. Sanchez, but I saw that he was meeting with some people about his views about what's going on with the war in Israel and everything like that. I think he was meeting with China, but also his wife is apparently now being charged with corruption and everything like that. So how much is this in the news?
I don't know. The thing is, they're talking about selling influence or whatever, or peddling influence. I don't know what it means, and allegations don't necessarily mean that the allegations are true. So you have to wait till things play out. Now,
well, wait a minute. If you're peddling influence, wouldn't that be what Donald Trump has been doing? Because I also read an article
where he does it all the time.
And everything like that. He's made tons of billions of dollars.
But it's not just Donald Trump. It's the whole Congress. I mean, we did pension plans for people and lobby groups that peddled influence in Washington, D.C. If you ever go to Washington, D.C., I know Ken just got back from there. I mean, it is a place where money gets passed around like hotcakes, but they do it legally through their political action committees into their campaigns. It's kind of like a one big money laundering place. Yet they have anti-money laundering statutes, but they do it legally. I mean, it goes from the campaign, and then from the campaign, it goes into your Paquito. Just go, are you kidding me?
So Washington, D.C. is laid out like a grid, and the streets, a lot of streets are named after letters of the alphabet, and there's K Street, which is famous. That's where all the lobbying groups are.
The law firms have turned into lobbyists. Okay, so they're on K Street. And so what happens is you basically have a cesspool of money and legalized corruption, if that's possible. In other words, I think that's the reason you need lawyers. You need to know how to launder the money properly, from the lobbyist to the person you're going to influence, to their campaigns, to from their campaigns to their pocketbook. I mean, the whole place is disgusting. And that's part of the reason I stopped working for a political action. I mean, not working, I was volunteer for a political action committee. I was going, is it this blatantly corrupt in Washington, D.C.?
But that has to
And
be
the
a
answer
great-
is yes, it is. Just
It
get
has to be a
over it.
great job to have, to work for a lobbying firm where your
Oh,
bosses
gosh.
say, we have $50 million to give out.
Yeah.
It's your job to get this, to take these legislators out and show
Well,
them.
that's basically it. And wine, dine, and then at the end of the day, distribute checks for their campaigns. I mean, that's it. But see, I was just a volunteer for that, so I wasn't getting paid to do it. It was just like every week. No, it's not every week. Excuse me. Every month, you go through a list of congressmen and senators or political people and determine how much money you're going to give them based on what they did for us. And I'm going like, are you serious? You know, this is up front center. So David Walker keeps saying everybody takes a civics exam, civics, what do I call it, course. But wait a minute, your best civics course is go to Washington, D.C. and watch the corruption up and personal. I mean, if you see it live, corruption, alive. It's different. It's just like
speaking of corruption,
there's a fancy name for it. It's called legislative capture. If you've given a politician so much money that you own them, you've captured them.
No, you totally captured everything of that. Speaking of capturing and everything like that, there is a lot of paying attention to history. I was actually watching Stephen Colbert, and they had a daughter of somebody that I used to admire a lot when she was living, even though her life was cut short and everything like that. But it was Minnie Riperton's daughter, Maya Rudolph, who's now in the play Oh Mary, which is about Mary Todd Lincoln. And I forgot that Mary Todd, and there have been a number of people that played this role, that she had a lot of things going on in her life, not just the assassination of her husband, but apparently she also suffered from some illnesses in terms of her mental health and all along those lines. So I think that's what Oh Mary touches on and everything like that. So you going, because I know you're a big Broadway fan, to see Oh Mary. And by the way, Rick, before I get to that, there is a play here that I think you need to come and see because of the name of your show and everything. And I think it's tonight, but here in Durham, because you do the show here on the network called Naked at Night, which is you arguing with Lance, who is a conservative, so it's a liberal and conservative. But there is a performance going on tonight. I noticed it when I was catching the bus, and I think it's tonight, of the Naked Magician. So I don't know if these magicians are actually naked, but that's the title of the show. It's called The Naked Magicians.
Yeah, I don't know. When back like 30 years ago, 20 years ago, there was a show called Puppetry of the Penis. And you'd show up, and I guess some guys would come out, and they would fold their penises into different shapes, and that was the show. Like they'd make
boy, that's exciting. By the way, do we have a slow news day? Because I know you guys are discussing sports, and I thought there's a couple exciting things that happened. First of all, the Hungarian Orban, wherever his name is,
Orban, yeah.
Oh yeah, he's gone, and they got a new guy in. But the Donald, which is your president, has decided to block the Strait of Hormuz, I believe, and take over the Iranian position of being the how you say it, in charge of the stray of all the boats going in and out. I mean, isn't that going to create some calamity, especially when the Chinese frigates decide they want to move the oil from Iran to China?
Not just oil, but fertilizer
or whatever. In other words,
fertilizer, they can move a lot of stuff. So we talked about that, and definitely that's going on. But you know, your buddy Donald, and I was telling definitely Rick that earlier, he decided to have a DoorDash person come by and make a delivery to the White House, where he gave her $100 tip because he was trying to get some news off of what was going on in the sense of the news around Iran and the sense of some of the other things, including that Jesus Christ image and everything like that. So you're trying to find some positive news in that space and everything like that. By the way, The Naked Magician is a live comedy magic show from Australia. So maybe Shaquille knows about this. The tagline for the show is "Good musicians don't need sleeves and great musicians don't need pants." And the show is created by Australian comedy magicians Mike Taylor and Christopher Wang, who perform it as a duo on stage. The show is a mix of magic and comedy delivered by magicians who slowly remove their clothing during the show until they are completely naked. So they are totally naked at the end of the show.
Oh, super duper. I hope they're not.
The White House is chaos right now. The Trump stays up all night tweeting. He pulls stunt. I mean, the Iran war was, in a way, it was a stunt. that Netanyahu told Trump that you just push on the regime a little bit, it'll collapse, and you'll have an easy victory, and that'll save you in the midterms. Of course, that didn't happen. We're in the 7th week of the war.
It's not going to happen if the stats are correct, if the metrics are correct, and 20% of the Iranians support the regime, even though 80% disagree. 20% of 90 million people, it's 18 million people. They're not gonna just disappear overnight. So that's why I said, if you want to win the war, kill off a quarter of million.
Iran does not have the Second Amendment. So when people who are people who are pro gun say, if we have a tyrannical government, well, we have all the guns in America. Just try to do tyranny here. That's the argument. I don't know if it's a great argument, but over there, the people do not have the guns.
Yeah, they're disarmed.
Well, apparently you don't need guns. Hold on a second. Apparently you don't need guns in certain countries, and I know that in about 10 minutes we're going to go do that show and everything like that. But apparently, where Sasha is and everything like that, he's in Canada, but where he was originally from, they just won some major victories without having any infantry at all. So the drones apparently have captured some property, and they didn't have to even use the whole notion of an infantry. So Sasha, what's your thoughts around that? Because I did see the
drones.
The drones have won a major victory without having to sacrifice any lives. So everything. So that would be a positive in a war if the drones are doing all the casualties. So what's your take?
Ukraine is fighting war of 21st century. United States are fighting a war of 20th century. They have this large air carriers and all the machinery and bombs and all that stuff is 20th century. The 21st century is drones, it's AI, it's all kinds of missiles that Ukrainians developed. And Ukrainians went much farther than the United States in a missile development. They just don't have a lot of quantities of that because of the economic factors. But they will very shortly. Once the war with Russia will end, Russians will leave all Ukrainian territory and run away. And Ukraine will become one of the major exporters of weapons in the world. And look at what's doing China now. China, by the way, Russia as well, but most importantly, North Korea. They are supplying Iran, and not just the same rocket missiles that they had before. They're supplying now supersonic, the very advanced missile system. So U.S. has to be very mindful of not only the weapons that Iran already has, but what it may have in the nearest future. Situation is very, very dangerous. Now, Turkey is voicing their desire to occupy Israel. Right now, it's just a desire, but at least the fact that they're voicing it explains why U.S. needs to leave NATO, because Turkey is a NATO country, and to have a free hand of dealing with Turkey, U.S. must leave NATO.
Okay. Well, the U.S. isn't going to leave NATO, and the hypersonic missiles aren't getting through the Strait right now because we just blockaded it. But I'm glad you did mention it, because this way, hopefully, Trump will become serious about this and knock off about 250,000 Iranians and change the regime. But he needs to be bloody about it. He doesn't need to be wishy-washy, which is what he is right now. What he needs to do is be ruthless about it, and then he'll win the war. But until that happens,
so the cost of doing that is
every war has a cost. We already know what the cost is. I got books on how much it costs. And he says, "Oh, we'll spend another $500 billion." He wants to up the defense budget.
Well, I'm talking about in terms of lives.
$1.5 trillion. What you need to do is do exactly what everybody doesn't want, and that's to eliminate a lot of people, and not 5,000, not 10,000, not 100, but basically your basic 250,000, and then you'll win the war. That's what you need to do.
But so let's say you're right. You need, if you need to kill 250,000 Iranians,
That's
that means that you're going to lose 10,000 Americans.
Yeah, that's correct. And so what? You know, I mean, that's just the way it is. That's what war is about. War isn't for people that are just playing around. It's serious business. Go look at Patton. Go look at what happened in World War II. I mean, come on. You know, look at the U.S. You had what they call it, the Civil War. Well, 600,000 people died. I mean, you got to get real on these numbers. You know, what you're doing, you're not even doing a war. You're just doing patty cakes over there. And that's a waste of time. I'm wasting my time watching it, and the world's wasting everybody's time looking at it. Yes, Sasha.
I've said on this program.
You got to get closer to the mic.
Probably around 2 weeks ago, I said on this program that America definitely has capacity to obliterate Iran, take it all over, find this enriched uranium, and just do anything what they want to do. Except one thing, there is a price to pay for it. The price is about 200,000 American soldiers' lives. And the question is, America, yeah, it's about there that we see, but it doesn't matter. If America can swallow 20,000, they can swallow 40,000, they can swallow 100,000 and 150,000 and up to 100,000. Okay, what makes a difference if it's 200,000 or 100,000? Need be practical. What about?
The thing is, I would agree with you if it was.
Swallow that.
I would have agreed with you if it was World War II technology, but that's not. If you look at what happened in Iraq, I think, Rick, how many people did we lose in Iraq?
Just a ridiculously small number.
A ridiculously small amount. Because of the technology, the U.S. would lose very few people in overthrowing the regime. Iran would lose a lot of people. And that is what you need to do. You need to be ruthless if you want to win a war. If you're not willing to do that, don't
demonstrate it
in the bloody war.
Demonstrate it.
Okay. He can demonstrate it. He has the technology. Look what happened to Iraq.
Don't talk
they
about
the biggest military in the Middle East, Sasha. They had over 1.5 million soldiers in Iraq, and then we wiped out 250,000 or 500,000 of them. Come on.
Okay, so we got to be clear. So we did lose a significant number of people. There were 2 wars at once: the Afghan War, the Iraq War. We lost 4,500 Americans in 8 years over there, which is not a small number.
4,500.
4,492 died in Operation Iraqi Freedom between 2003 and 2011.
Well, that is a small number. And if you look at any history of war, 4,000 is like nothing. That's a small battle.
It's a huge number to the families of the dead.
No. I mean, the thing, like I said, I got books on battles. That's a tiny little battle, and during the medieval period of the world. I mean, if you go through the battles that changed history, even the small battles, and I'm talking like in the 1500s, they'd kill out 26,000 people, easy. So when you're talking 4,500, basically talking zero. And what happens is, if you want to win the war, this is what you need to do. Other than that, you're wasting everybody's time. I mean, seriously, all this negotiation, we're going to talk about peace, blah, blah, blah. I mean, seriously.
But we were the aggressors. We're the aggressors.
So what?
Well, so can Trump stay in power?
He's not going to be in power anyway. He's gone in 2 years. And he's 80 years old. He's going to be dead. You know, by the time historians figure out whether he's bad or good, he'll be gone. So, and the world will move on. The only question is, do you want to do this or no? If this is what he wanted to do, then he needs to bloody well do it. and stop this patty cake baker's man with the Iranians. Just get it over with, and then let's move on, and we'll go do something else. And then the IRBC or whatever they are won't exist anymore. Okay, there'll be a new group of people in Iran, and the world will change, and everybody move on. Other than that, it's a waste of time, because those Iranians, they're not going to change their mind. They like they said, we'll wait till 14 million people die. I believe that is not true. 250,000, it'll be over, because I don't know if you saw that Reacher thing. He goes, there were 5 people. Okay. He goes, well, there's only really 3. Why is that? Once I take out you, there'll be 2 wingmen, and I'll take them out too, and the other 3 are going to leave. And he was right. And he goes, have you done this before? He goes, yes. So what happens is the Iranian war, if they want to end it, I'll take out 250,000 and the rest of them will quit. Seriously, it'll be over. So
Okay, but
when he's
I'm
ready,
not sure
to do
that Trump has
we're
the
done.
political power to do that.
Well, that's not my problem.
Okay.
My problem. I mean, I really don't care. In other words, the thing is, either you're going to do it or no. If you're going to do it, get it bloody well done, and let's move on. If you're going to play patty cake, you can do that for the next 3 years. You know, but
All right.
playing patty cake bakers, man, is a waste of everybody's time. So, you know, we'll see if he. If
All right.
he
Well,
has the
speaking of
chutzpah to do it.
time, we're out of time.
We're out of time. So I guess we'll see everybody tomorrow.
All right.
Gotta
See
go.
you.
Bye bye.